You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for May the 5th, 2023. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where...
Ron, you magnificent bastard, I read your book.
It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and BlueGal.
You magnificent bastard, I read your book!
Yours is so much better than mine. Your Mickey Mouse impersonation is so much better than mine.
Greatest Mickey Mouse imitation in history,
Yeah?
my knowledge, was Harlan Ellison.
Oh, really?
Bragged about it. He wrote essays about it. It's part of what got him fired from Disney.
Fired from Disney,
working
yeah.
there.
Well, I'm not worried now that Mr. Iger is going to sue either one of us for copyright infringement.
No.
But it does open up our show to the self-own of the week.
Yes.
Ron DeSantis may have to ban his own book, Driftglass.
I just love this story. I love it so much.
Disney is reading passages of The Courage to Be Free by Ron DeSantis into the court records while suing Ron DeSantis for violation of their First Amendment rights.
Uh-huh.
I thought Ron was from the party of corporations or people, Driftglass.
Well, some corporations are more people than others. So, yeah. And it really is. And it wasn't just he mentioned it. He talks about how he's plotting to do this.
Bragging about it. About it.
For political reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. Who did he think was going to read his book?
Yeah, well.
And these books aren't read. They aren't designed to be read.
Exactly.
They're designed to be on a shelf as a Horcrux, if you will.
Yes, indeed.
A talisman that designates you as a true conservative.
Yeah.
Just like Mark Levin. Nobody reads Mark Levin.
No.
You just have a Mark Levin book on your shelf to prove that you're with the tribe.
Well, and this goes back a number of years to printing a bunch of shitty books, having them bulk purchased by a wealthy person or organization and given away as premiums at CPAC to drive that book onto the New York Times bestseller.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
This headline is from the Washington Post, and it is, pay attention now, factually true. This is a factually true statement in the headline by the Washington Post. Billionaire paid tuition for Justice Clarence Thomas's grandnephew, report says, unquote. Now, that's a terribly written headline. It's confusing and it's written backwards, but it's true. As are these two paragraphs. Quote, the total amount Crow spent on the grandnephew Martin's education is unclear, but if Crow paid for all 4 years at the two schools, the price tag could have exceeded $150,000, according to public records of tuition rates at the schools. Kaplan, Elliott, and Mayersky write. I believe those are the reporters. Thomas didn't disclose Crow's tuition payments, even though he did disclose another friend's $5,000 gift for Martin's education in 2002, unquote. Now.
So that's all factually true.
It's all factually true. So you're reading along, you read this thing, and then, being who we are, we read a little further and we hit the money quote. The real money
There's
quote.
always a razor in the apple, isn't there?
There always is, isn't there? If you read a little bit further down, quote, the revelation is likely to outrage, wait for it, Democrats who have denounced Thomas for accepting luxury trips from Crow, because only Democrats would be outraged by the outright bribery of a Supreme Court justice by a rich right-wing asshole. Open, flagrant bribery that he covered up, and his response when he got caught was, fuck you, I'm a Supreme Court justice, I can do whatever I want.
Well, this proves that the Republicans' relationship with each of their Supreme Court justices is purely transactional.
Yes.
They put these guys on the court to do a job for them.
Right. They're hired.
It has nothing to do with jurisprudence or the long arm of the law or anything. It's we want you to serve our interests.
Yeah. And as you pointed out,
yeah, they don't give a shit. Apparently, Republicans don't give a shit.
Well, and you pointed out to me earlier that it's not Clarence Thomas had to be bought.
Right.
But now they found it's just cheaper to open a farm and raise them from little whelplings. Amy Coney Barrett, just raise them up.
It's an orchid hothouse flower, plant the bulb,
Right.
and force the bulb, and then when it flowers, you put it on the court.
Right.
Yeah.
That's Paul Ryan's career. We're going to pay
Yeah.
for this, we're going to pay for that, and then we'll put you in the house and you'll become our cipher because you're wired to believe this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And as you and I were listening to an undisclosed podcast, a different podcast that we're not endorsing, but it was all about how the right wing does this with all kinds of professions, like the journalistic profession. They have a shit ton of money. I don't think we understand exactly how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars they pour into developing talent, developing bloggers, developing podcasters, developing writers, developing journalists, sending them to journalism training schools, buying newspapers to put the journalists on those newspapers just to push their fucking ideas out. And they see it as a long-term investment.
Yeah. But they also accept bribery as the price of doing business. They're the mob.
Well, yeah.
So perhaps Democrats need to dirty their hands and realize that this is how it's played and do it, or decide to play the high road and hope it works out. I don't know what the answer is to that. I do know there was someone on Twitter getting angry the way you do, Driftglass, about the lack of investment on the left, saying that right-wing organizations are constantly throwing free food parties for interns, house interns, because interns don't get paid.
Right.
And they don't have a lot of money, a lot of them. And so if you throw a reception where there's free food and booze, sure, they'll listen to a speech about the Heritage Foundation or whatever your right-wing organization is. And maybe they'll even make a connection with them and their business cards so that you can get their congressman to pass your legislation, whatever it is. But it is seed money, constant seed money.
Absolutely. It's what I've referred to on this podcast before and on my blog as the patient capital of fascism. Right. They're willing to spend as much as it takes decade after decade to build a fascist infrastructure that raises people up and then use that infrastructure to beat the shit out of the mainstream media to the point where even now, people in the mainstream press are really hesitant to point out that Fox News is a fascist news outlet. It's a fascist propaganda outlet. For years, liberals have been on the sidelines because we have no money. We have borrowed microphones and we have our own voices and we got brains. We have no funding except for you lovely
people. We make
people.
less every month doing this podcast than it costs 1 month for Clarence Thomas's grandnephew to go to school.
Right.
1 month's tuition.
Yeah. And
it's more than we make.
And that's sofa cushion money. That's just, that's a rounding error. It's not even noticeable, but it pays off. Yeah. In the end, it pays big dividends. And we are living with the results. And this is why I used to say back when Donald Trump was in office, this is not the 4th year of Donald Trump's administration. This is the 40th year of the Reagan Revolution.
Right.
This is them figuring out, the thing Eisenhower said years and years and years ago about Texas conservatives, that they wouldn't, nobody in their right mind is going to go after Social Security and Medicare. There are people in Texas who believe stupid shit, but they're very stupid and nothing will happen. Well, there is, if you pardon me saying a Star Trek, a little sideline on Star Trek, there was a Star Trek episode where Q had his power taken away from him. Mm-hmm. Okay. And Q was on the ship and the Enterprise was protecting him from the thousands of races who were trying to kill him because he's an asshole who monkeyed with them. And they were having a problem with, this asteroid is coming to crash into a planet. How do we stop it? We don't have enough, traction. We don't have a tractor beam, won't do it. And Q basically says, well, it's easy. You lower the gravitational constant of the universe and then just push it out of the way. I'm like, but we can't do that. Oh, that's right. You're not omnipotent. That's right. Well, 30, 40 years ago, right-wing conservatives figured out what we have to do since no one in their right mind is going to vote for our incredibly awful agenda. We have to lower the gravitational constant of American democracy. Mm-hmm. We have to have an all-out, full front war to make the media believe that we have a legitimate position and make our base believe that everyone's out to get them. And we will spend whatever it takes to build TV studios and churches and radios and newspapers to destroy the opposition. And they have succeeded. And all along the way, there were loud people on the sidelines going, we need to stop this. Like, no,
because everyone's getting rich.
Everything's fine.
So there's no point in doing that because we're going to make money doing this.
Right.
And democracy will take care of itself. We have endless optimism about democracy to the point where we can sell it out over and over and over again.
Yeah.
and it will remain constant.
Hey, we defeated the Nazis.
And this is what's going on with CNN having Trump on next week. We can just do this, and I still don't understand. I mean, I do understand.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why everyone hasn't just said, look, Donald Trump is disqualified from running. They cannot give up that incredibly fascist, stupid, whatever they are, audience that thinks Donald Trump walks on water.
And you know what? It's not
For
just
money.
CNN.
They have, and it's about money and ratings. That's what it's about.
You know, the Washington Post does that too, as my wife reminded me today with a pop quiz that I failed miserably. Would you like to tell the people about that?
Yeah, I read a headline to you from the editorial page of the Washington Post.
Yes, you did.
Here it is. Quote, why the media and politicians must resist pandering to the extremes.
Yeah.
And here's a quote from the op-ed. We don't want to give airtime to people twisted by fury and grievance, whether from the right or the left.
Or the left, BlueGal. Or the left.
Yeah.
And you gave me many chances to figure out who was writing this.
Well, it could be a multiple group of people. Right. There's a very select and large group of people who could have written this op-ed. Right. It's not terribly original.
No. But the point being, everyone I guessed has a very big role in the media, has a big role in some television or radio station or some other place, and has no fucking business having a column anywhere.
Right. All of them do.
All of them do. And
the answer to this one is Hugh Hewitt.
It's Hugh Hewitt.
But it could have been Joe Scarborough.
Sure. Absolutely. Right? Could have been a guest column by Joe Scarborough. Sure. A Mark Thiessen would have been a good guest.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey. Yep.
But it really is. And you know what? This has been a very big week for the worst people in the world, hiding behind both sides.
It's not just Hugh Hewitt. In fact, it's kind of been a flood this week.
It has.
Of both siderism. Which proves to me that something is terribly wrong in the force.
Yeah, something's wrong in the force. There's a great
disturbance in the force right now.
Yes.
With Trump getting, credibly, everyone being reminded that he is credibly charged with actual forcing a woman down and putting his penis inside of her rape.
Right. And that's hard. That's hard to both sides, but
you can't. Right. I mean, what was it that the Missouri Senate candidate said? If it's legitimate rape, right? And everyone gasped on the left that look, there's all kinds of rape is rape, and that is true. But even the people who think, oh, well, it's got to be a legitimate rape, cannot deny that this was rape.
No, and this is why. I think we're going to sell like 1 million both sides don't bumper stickers, because everyone's going to want to buy those, BlueGal, because you want to get on the bottom of a boom market like that. I made the mistake of not patenting dumpster fire and trademarking, and that was a big mistake because I lost out on millions of dollars. So just order your both sides don't t-shirts, and we get like a penny on every transaction. So
we get when the percentage, like the 2.5% that we make on each sale, adds up to $50, they send it to us, and I think they've done that twice in 13 years.
Yeah, so
that's about. But in the meantime, we're so glad to see the message getting out.
Oh no, this absolutely.
And we're so glad when someone meets us for coffee and is wearing a both sides don't t-shirt. It's like, that's so awesome. We're so glad.
And I'm especially like happy when I hear someone who I really think is awful doing the both sides do it, and they have to sort of stop and say, no, I'm not making a false equivalence, okay? I'm not making a false equivalence. This is not both sides stuff. Like, you're talking to me, aren't you, Charlie? You're talking directly to me, and I got you. I'm under your skin now. I live in your head now, which is great. But this week, as BlueGal said, there's a disturbance in the force, and everybody who's awful is jump on the both sides thing. Here's a quote. We reject the notion that hyperpartisanship and hatred in America exist on only one side. There are forces on the extreme left and the extreme right who do not respect foundational American ideals. That is holy Joe Lieberman.
Mm-hmm. The no labels guy.
The no labels guy, the possible candidate, vice president, whatever, who's not sure that Joe Biden's really centrist-y enough for them to get on board with. And remember, Joe Lieberman has been putting a knife into the backs of Democrats since 2000.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, he's been an asshole long before that, but he's been And ever since Democrats challenged him in the primary and beat his ass and made him form his own Joe Lieberman party, Joe Lieberman has gone out of his way to fuck with Democrats.
Yep.
Because Joe Lieberman is an awful, filthy, despicable old man who should go far away and never come back. But he's always finds a home somewhere to do his Joe Lieberman thing. You know,
he finds a credible billionaire to fund his no labels nonsense.
Yeah, like Harlan Crow.
Mr. Crow.
Mr.
Yes.
Harlan Crow. Now, here's Stuart
Harlan
Stevens, who I always give respect to because his book does say, yep, the Republican Party has been a shitty party and a racist party for forever. And I was part of it, and I take blame for it, and I respect that in a Never Trumper. He's about
You're talking about Stuart Stevens.
Stuart
right?
Stevens.
Yeah.
These are his comments about Holy Joe Lieberman and his bullshit nonsense and his justification for the existence of no labels. Quote, no labels is secretly funded with plan that guarantees election of Trump. One major donor exposed is Harlan Crow. I can't tell you why Lieberman is doing this any more than why RFK Jr. is an anti-vaxxer conspiracy nut, but this will elect Trump. Well, Stuart, if you'd like to blow in a call, I can tell you exactly why Joe Lieberman is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you might remember back when your party was running around obsessed with Bill Clinton's penis, right? You might remember the penis to Bill Clinton, the cleanest, and how that blowjob thing your party tried to use to destroy the Clinton administration, how Bill Clinton, how your assholes like Newt Gingrich swept power on the rhetoric of Rush Limbaugh, all the people you know very well, I'm sure people that you helped. And then they got their wish. They got Newt Gingrich in there. They got impeachment. They got the Democratic Party, feeling kneecapped and attacked. They got everyone in the media just talking about, well, it's in the air. We're talking about it's in the air. And then you got George W. Bush. Then you got W. And that was your big win. And then it turned out W was the worst president in modern history until Trump comes along. Turns out everything the left said about W was true. And one of the very first jokes I ever told on the internet was in the comment section of Steve Gigliar's news blog, which I took later, which is more than 18 years ago. And the joke, as you all know, is Dick Cheney is caught on the White House lawn on film throwing burning kittens at homeless veterans. What are the first three words out of David Gregory's mouth? Because back then it was David Gregory. And the answer is, but the Democrats. Since that time, it predates that for many, many years, but this is going back nearly 20 years. The fucking state religion of the Beltway media and all of the politicians who want to suck on the Beltway media has been both sides do it. Both sides are to blame. Both sides are at fault. Lieberman was an early adopter of this frame, and it worked for a long time. You could not have a conversation about the depravity of the Republican Party without someone saying, yeah, but the left is pretty bad too. And I include in this number David fucking Brooks, Matthew Dowd, who used his position at ABC News to both sides the shit out of the 2016 election until it blew up in his face, and then he erased his Twitter files, blocked me, and denied ever saying any of this shit. His pal Ron Fournier did this shit. So the state religion, and I mean old school Catholic, they'll burn you for a witch state religion of the mainstream media and the elite punditocracy has always been both sides do it. And Joe Lieberman is the turd that institution pooped out a long time ago. So of course Lieberman's going to say this because Lieberman believes both sides are terrible because he has to, because that's his faith. That's his one true faith. So if you want to blow in a call to me, Stuart, I'd be happy to clarify all this, although I did just do all that on the podcast. So just listen to the podcast.
And I want to talk for a moment about how exhausting this timeline that we're living in is.
Yeah.
For all of us. And you just thinking about Texas and Florida legislatures and governors alone is more than enough to make you feel overwhelmed.
And the people we love in Texas and Florida who are, living through this.
Really. Living through this and living under it. It's fascism. And the fight is long, and this is going to take time. But we've got allies, and I just want to point out how tired the arguments and the exhaustion of the ideals of Republican Congress is right now.
Yeah.
That they have completely run out of any ideas of what to say on television.
No.
And so the latest thing is we think there's something terribly wrong. It's Hunter Biden's laptop, but it's Biden bribery, something, whistleblower. It's just word salad. and then asked, if you're on a network that asks questions back at you, what if you find out this is nothing? What will you do then? Well, I might not admit it. I mean, Ron Johnson literally said that. What if there are no documents? Well,
so what?
So what? Exactly.
Yeah. I just got reelected.
I want another Benghazi, and I'm going to invent one out of thin air.
Right.
And if it turns out to be exposed as that, exposed to whom?
Right.
My audience doesn't care.
Right. Republicans don't care.
And you and I had a conversation this afternoon about Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
Who is trying to gin up his audience and Hannity's audience specifically to be able to say, aha, by predicting that the Justice Department is going to charge Hunter Biden with some low-level crime, some tax crime, maybe some gun crime. By the way, if they charge Hunter Biden with failing or lying on a gun registration form, I can't wait.
Yeah.
For Republican media to start talking about how terrible it is to break a gun law.
Oh yeah. Oh no. No one's above the law. Yeah.
Ted Cruz predicting, they're gonna do some low-level charge to Hunter Biden, and then that sets them loose to charge Donald Trump with something really serious, because then they will appear to be balanced. We charged Hunter Biden with something, so now we can really go after Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that Trump, of course, the assumption behind that is Trump hasn't actually committed any crimes.
Right. No, it's something. Well, and Ted Cruz got his ass handed to him by the late Tucker Carlson.
Yep.
On television. Yep. Tucker Carlson
for saying that January 6th was real and it was bad.
Yeah. And Tucker Carlson took his dick out and slapped Cruz in the face several times with it.
And he went back on Tucker and apologized.
Right.
Yes, he did.
Cruz knows who he's talking to.
Yep. So, but you made the point about intellectual fragility. To whom is Ted Cruz willing to say those kind of lies to?
Right. And
Ted Cruz has a podcast with some of his interns who are law students, and he never pushes this kind of nonsense with them. He's talking about constitutional history and, giving moot court advice to them and so forth and so on. He doesn't do all this nonsense about Hunter Biden.
No.
But the Fox audience is a different ball of wax, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's not a matter of debating them. We've long left the planet of debate. We're not talking about debating anymore. If the idea that you're going to have an honest and rigorous conversation with a Trump supporter or a Trump congressman is bullshit. What you're going to get, what you have, these people, they live in a bell jar. They only rebreathe their own beer farts over and over again. And Ted Cruz is perfectly comfortable feeding them nonsense. And you and I and everyone we know and all the normal people we know are looking into this zoo, this menagerie of weirdos and fuck-ups and brain-dead assholes. And we're like, how can anyone... Oh, that's right. They've been conditioned. They've trained themselves to believe this. They cannot digest honest information anymore. They can only live off of the bullshit Ted Cruz is feeding them, and he knows he's feeding them bullshit. And the reason you're dealing with someone who has no confidence... remember, we used to talk a little bit more about the tribe that rubs shit in their hair.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are in a cave with other people like themselves, styling their hair with their own feces.
Right.
And they all think that their hairdos look great. And they get them all up in fancy patterns and four-masted ships on their heads made of poop. And they think they look wonderful. And then they wander out and deal with people in the real world, and everyone is fucking horrified at the sight of it. That's who we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who don't recognize or acknowledge the existence of facts or reason or debate as a way of arguing over anything. And the people who are aware that this is their universe by their unwillingness to engage with anyone outside of it in any serious way. Ted Cruz will only talk this way on Fox.
Mm-hmm.
And,
only on Hannity. I really think it's dumbed down to the, if you're looking at the levels of Fox News and how dumb you can get, Hannity is down at the bottom.
Well, and there's a podcast over at The Bulwark. The Bulwark, as you probably know, I mentioned it once or twice on our podcast, is where a lot of Never-Trumpers end up. It's a very well-funded, basically a spin-off, an asset, a wing of MSNBC. You cannot go more than 20 minutes on MSNBC without seeing Charlie Sykes or someone else from The Bulwark talking about The Bulwark and how great The Bulwark is. And I just sit and go, imagine if MSNBC dumped this much free publicity into the liberal blogosphere. But they don't. So on the Bulwark, there's free podcasts, and they have a huge staff, and they have a lot of people, and they can do lots and lots of podcasts. We do basically 2.5 podcasts because it's just you and me, and we also write, and we have other things to do. Like today, the sink in the bathroom crapped out. So now I'm trying to fix that. So, we have other things that we're up to, like you do, I'm sure. But there are also premium podcasts over there, podcasts that you pay extra money for if you'd like to see them. And one such thing that they have is called Just Between Us, which is a conversation between Charlie Sykes and Mona Charen. And no, I do not pay for Bulwark Plus, but they do have teaser rates. They do have 10-minute clips of these things. And occasionally I go over there and see what are they talking about for the audience that pays to listen to them.
Wow.
And I happened upon an episode entitled, this is the title, Cancer versus Heart Attack. And
now, wait a minute. Cancer versus heart attack.
Cancer versus heart attack.
Let me guess.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Trump Republicans are a heart attack, but Democrats are cancer.
Yeah. Liberals are cancer.
Liberals are cancer.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're kidding me. That's really what it's about?
Nope, that's literally what. This is a result of a thing that Charlie Sykes and Mona Charen both went to out in Phoenix, Arizona, called Pragmatists and Patriots Conference, or Patriots and Pragmatists Conference, which is also funded to, the six figures by rich people who fund these sorts of things all the time. All I know is you and I weren't invited. Apparently, we're neither patriotic nor pragmatic, and we don't show up on anyone's radar. But it is the leading donors and operatives from the left and the right which fund this thing. And if you'd like a description of it, I have it over my blog, which is it's fizzy, frothy, empty consultant speak, more than I've seen since I was at the city of Chicago in upper management. It is extremely awesome in terms of what it doesn't say. Anyway, the takeaway from this conference was, the two of them, is, when you defend liberal democracy, and then Charlie Sykes stops himself. Because every time Charlie Sykes brings up liberal democracy, he stops and explains, I'm not talking about liberals. It's icky. Don't mistake me as defending liberals. I'm talking about liberal democracy, okay? I don't want to get any of that icky liberal stuff on me. So let me stop and explain what liberal democracy is. It's small L liberalism. And we're combating the rampant illiberalism. But how can you defend the rampant illiberalism on the right if you don't fight the rampant illiberalism on the left? And then we're off to the fucking races.
Yeah.
And he even stops to say, and this is how I know we've gotten to them. He stops to say, no, this is not a false equivalence. This is not a false equivalence. And then he nothing
He's
but
saying
false
that
equivalence.
Directly to you, Driftglass.
But he says, and I'm quoting, but we have a two-front war here. And I'm like, it's weird how our allies think of us as one of the enemies in this two-front war of theirs. Don't you think? It's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes through the whole thing about how Donald Trump, yada, 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 the MAGA right is a heart attack. It's bad. It's very bad. It's right now. We got to fix the patient right now. But illiberalism on the left, quoting Mr. Sykes now, is more like cancer. So they're both serious, but you need to focus on one right now. But eventually you're going to have to worry about, after the heart attack, you're going to have to fix the cancer that is the illiberal left. And then he breaks into his unnamed liberal person who might object to my bullshit voice, which is, some people might say blah, 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 blah. And if you listen to him for any length of time, you will notice that none of the objections he raises to his obviously biased bullshit come from any actual liberal persons you've ever heard of. They all come from the some people say bucket.
Yes.
This bucket that Donald Trump finds all these bald, sweaty men who think he's doing a great job for president. And some people say this, and, well, you're trying to do both sides of this. You're trying to draw. And he says, no, I'm making a distinction here, because we on the left are all very stupid and don't understand what words mean. But he talks about this as a thing that no one is willing to talk about, the illiberalism on the left, even though never Trumpers talk about this shit incessantly. And the reason I bring this up is because they never talk about this shit when there's an actual liberal in the room. They never talk about this shit on MSNBC, where Charlie Sykes shows up every day and Mona Charen is on once a week. They never bring on actual liberals. They bring on, a cage-fed, milk-fed, bulwark housebroken, I agree with everything you've ever said, Charlie, liberal like Will Salatan. But instead, try going toe-to-toe with Digby. Have Digby on to have this conversation about how the illiberal left are censoring people. Or have Allison Hanschel on, Athena Wise from Twitter. Have Charlie Pierce come on. Have a conversation with him on a microphone. Or Brad Friedman. Or, who's really good at this? My wife. My wife's really good at this sort of thing. And I guarantee you those would be very lively conversations, and you might learn something. But there's a whole universe of people out here that you could be talking to, but you don't really want to talk to us because we have a different point of view and we have things that we have to say on the subject that you don't want to hear. Now, Mona Charen chimed right in with, oh, yes, members of my own family actually don't believe that it's as bad as it is, but it's so very bad, so terrible, so bad. You know what? Students feel this way. People are self-censoring themselves all over the place, and the statistics show people feel they're self-censoring. And that's all due to this sort of the mighty mind control powers of liberals. Believe me, if we had mighty mind control powers, I would be using them every goddamn day. I know they don't work because, first of all, I'm self-censoring right now like a mother. Trust me. And secondly, I still hear people on the bulwark saying stupid shit every day. They don't seem to be self-censoring themselves at all. They seem to be very comfortable calling people like me a monster and stupid and deranged and unfit and really beneath them. They're moral inferior. And they don't seem to have any sweat over that, nor do people at the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Atlantic or the Los Angeles Times or MSNBC or ABC or CBS. But here's the problem. We're talking about people who live inside their own little media bubble. And people like Mona Charen and Charlie Sykes who live in that media bubble where they bounce from their own podcast to the newsletter they write to the people who subscribe to their podcast to MSNBC and back again and around to conferences with people who think like them. They don't really spend a lot of time out here where we live in the real world. In the real world, people like me got thrown in Twitter jail 4 times and so forth. But who does self-censor out here in the real world?
Everybody who's a liberal does.
Everyone who's a liberal and is terrified of getting shot for opening their mouths because Republicans, conservatives make a point of everyone knowing we're heavily armed, we're full of rage, and we believe you people should be crushed and destroyed. So we are very careful with what we say in public. You know who else self-censors every day? Anyone with a job, with a shitty boss. And you know what? Tucker Carlson should have censored himself a little bit more. Maybe he'd still be on the air. But people who actually live in the real world and have real jobs censor themselves all the time. Anyone who goes to church and doesn't get up and shout, this is all bullshit, when the pastor dips into Leviticus is censoring themselves. And like my wife just said, anyone out here in Trump country where the racist wingnut sewage comes out of the radio 24/7 and the assholes are all rage drunk and armed to the teeth. But you know who doesn't self-censor themselves? The racist asshole at the end of the bar who's got all kinds of opinions about the coloreds and the aforementioned assholes out here in Trump country, 2 of whom we spotted at the hardware store just the other day wearing their Trump 2020.
You and Junior Dude were at the hardware store at the same time.
We crossed paths, and there's 2 guys in there, each of whom's wearing a different Trump 2024 hat, looking like they want someone to start something. Just kind of like, go ahead, say something. I dare you to say them. And speaking of Junior Dude gets customers in his line at the store who just feel free to spout up about, I think everything costs so much because we're spending all that money on Ukraine. That's why everything eggs cost $9. Or
Junior Dude's working in a grocery store as a checkout person while he's going to grad school. And he did. He comes home every day saying, yep, had a right-wing asshole in my line today. He wanted me to know that, if only we weren't spending so much time letting people in at the border.
Right.
Groceries would be cheaper because that's a logical thing to say. Yes.
And where you're going this summer? Oh, it's a crime-ridden hellhole. You shouldn't go there.
Oh yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
That beautiful little town far, far away from here is a crime-ridden hellhole that you shouldn't go to because
don't go to the West Coast. It's a crime-ridden hellhole.
The whole West Coast is on fire. It's on fire all the time. So, and these people feel perfectly free to share their stupid, awful, racist opinions very publicly all the time. I see no evidence that the liberal thought control machine is doing anybody any good. Now, I can personally attest to these examples, and you know why? Because, like the Scarlet Pimpernel, by day, I move around among them looking like them. I am a bald, white guy who dresses in Carhartt flannels and jeans. I have a ball cap. I understand hardware. And and how I censor myself when I go out in public is like I don't use my big vocabulary words. Because using big vocabulary words is a tell. Are you one of them liberals? Are you one of them liberal guys? And I stand in line at the post office, stand in line at the hardware store, and I hear this shit all the time. It's not, no one out here feels the least bit shy about sharing their awful opinions. So why, BlueGal, why? I've been writing this for 18 years now. Why do our allies, why do people who are never Trump allies still have to make detours every time they get a microphone in front of them to talk about how the left is pretty much nearly almost as bad as the right? The left is pretty awful bad. They're doing pretty much the same thing. Give them enough runtime, they'll be a left-wing Trump. Just trust me on this. Why do they feel compelled to do that? Why? And if you'd like to, I'll tell you why.
Yeah, tell me.
I wrote a very long TLDR thing. I'll summarize it for you here, but it's on my blog, and I call it the 7 Horcruxes of true conservatism. And very briefly, it's this. All these never Trump elite media people were all at one time true conservatives. And at that point, all true conservatives believed the same stuff. They believed 7 basic lies about things. They believed deficits were evil, and they should be stopped at all costs. They believed an armed society is a polite society. They believed abortion is murder, and overturning Roe versus Wade will set everything right. They believed that stacking the courts was perfectly acceptable. Rick Wilson, before he found his never Trump voice, said we shouldn't feel bad. We should definitely take the Supreme Court seat away from Barack Obama. We have the votes to do it. We should do it. We should no shame about that because we're right and they're wrong. So they used to believe all these things. And then it all fell apart. It all came apart. These were their Horcruxes. This is where their soul was stored, these pieces. And little by little, these elite media pundit folks who control the narrative, turns out their party doesn't give a shit about deficits at all.
Right.
At all. And their party stood up and cheered when Joe Biden said, so we're not going to touch Social Security or Medicare? Oh, no, we're not touching that shit. There's another one down. They got their wish. They got their wish with Roe versus Wade. They got everything they wanted. And now they're like, oh, shit, we're screwed. Oh, my God, what are we going to do? You got what you wanted. You built the base you wanted. You got the policies you wanted. You've spent 30 years building towards this moment. And now you got everything you want. What is an armed society no longer a polite society? No, I guess not. Mass shooting every day. So you got everything you want and it's all horrible. So what do they have left to believe in? They have one lie and one magic spell to protect the last Horcrux. The last lie is Democrats are bad. They have to believe that. Because if you don't believe we on the left are bad, why the hell would you be a conservative anymore? What defines you as a conservative? Your entire movement turned out to be shit. Liberals turned out to be right. Your entire party kicked you out or ran you out, and they hate your guts. So why aren't you a Democrat? Well, you can't be a Democrat because then you would give up your identity. Then why would anyone hire Charlie Sykes to do anything? Why would anyone listen to Mona Charen? They have to carve out a place for themselves where they are still conservatives. But the only thing they have left to define their conservatism is hate for people like you and me. And of course, the magic spell that they invoke every time, it turns out, nope, Republicans are so very much worse is both sides do it. Both sides do it, both sides do it, both sides do it. And you will find these 2 elements, these last Horcrux and the last magic spell to protect that Horcrux in every goddamn speech they make, every time they're in front of a microphone, every time they're talking among themselves. That's what they believe. And that's all they have left. They have hatred of us, contempt for us, a feeling of moral superiority to us. We didn't lose our party. We didn't get kicked out of our party. Our party's not full of fascists. From where does this sense of moral superiority come? But they protect themselves in the last little shred of their identity with 2 big lies. Democrats are bad, and both sides do it. And that's my hot take today, BlueGal. I hope you like it.
There you go. Big, huge news flash here, Driftglass.
Uh-huh.
Oh, my God. Tucker Carlson is a racist.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. You're kidding. Now I got to lie down.
And the text came out about how white people fight. This is not how white people fight.
Yeah.
White men fight. And so the next morning, Joe Scarborough runs a series of Tucker clips of Tucker being racist.
Oh, no.
And then they cut back to Joe Scarborough and said, I have no words.
Mm-hmm.
I have no words. Well, how long has you been collecting Tucker clips of him being racist? And all of a sudden, you have no words.
You know what, BlueGal? You know what?
What?
If there were a mighty liberal thought control censoring machine,
We would have gotten that word out there.
no, Scarborough would have no words. He
He'd
would
have
have
no
no words at
words.
all. He'd be terrified to open his big yap,
You'd wave your little fingers
I
or
would.
big fingers.
and he'd shut up, and he'd shut the hell up. But
He would lose his voice.
well, and you asked me earlier when we talked about this,
Mhm.
Hey, Joe, how old are those clips exactly?
Yeah.
How long have they been on the shelf that you just noticed
Media
them today?
Matters makes a whole website about this every day.
That's right.
Tucker is the disinformation of the year for 2022, I believe.
Mm-hmm. But remember, nothing exists before today. Nothing
Right.
exists before now. No fair
We just-
remembering stuff.
But we're allowed to have moral outrage over
Right.
Tucker's history. We're just
Right,
not
absolutely.
allowed to acknowledge that we might have any responsibility out for it before today.
We should start a
Responsibility
podcast.
starts right this minute. Yes.
We should start a podcast about not remembering stuff, about how unfair it is to remember things. That's my
Well,
pitch.
I was thinking that you and I would disguise our voices and start a Third Way Solutions podcast and then
Yeah.
get some right-wing billionaire to fund us.
Well, you don't know this, or maybe you do. I have a bunch of practice blogs out there that I tried out. I had a thing called the
The
Driftington Post.
Driftington Post. I remember that one.
And
Yeah.
I had a thing called Spectrum, which was all about the center left to center right spectrum of opinions. I think we're ready. I can disguise my voice. I mean, we proved at the top of this podcast we can do Mickey Mouse.
Well, you told me at lunch, you said that, your mother's passed away, but you want to live in her house and have someone else pay for it.
Yeah, I want to buy.
And you'd like a grandnephew that you can put through a $6,000 a month boarding school.
Yeah,
Because
I have grandnephews now. I'd like to be able to do that for them.
Oh, that's
I
right.
think
You do. We do have grandnephews now.
it's only fair. I think that it's not a bribe; it's an investment. So
What did you say? Clarence Thomas is living my life.
he's living my life, and I would like that back, please. Thank you very much. Please and thank you.
In the mail today, Driftglass, I got an actual letter with my official DNC member 2023 membership card
Oh
with
God,
Joe Biden's face on it.
you're a card carrying member.
Card carrying member of the DNC since 2017, it says. And it just goes to show you, Driftglass, what Andrew Yang said this week is true. The DNC is in the tank for Biden.
Oh my God, you mean? Wait
That's
a minute.
almost as shocking as finding out Tucker Carlson is a racist.
Now I can't handle both of those, Blue Gal. I'm bowled over. I'm back on my heels. You mean the Democratic National Committee is in the tank for the incumbent Democratic president? Oh my God,
I know, right?
Andrew Yang. Where do I sign up to your word party?
But before we go on to our news roundup, I did want to point out to everyone something that when I was teaching 6th grade American history in Alabama, and I taught about the civil rights movement. This was before that was illegal, I played the speech that LBJ gave on civil rights, in which he included the line, "We shall overcome."
Mm-hmm.
He points to his white Southern colleagues that he's known for 30 years, and he says, "We shall overcome." And the documentary in which that clip was playing had a civil rights worker, many civil rights workers interviewed, but one of them had been working in the LBJ White House at the time. And he said, when I heard the president say the words from the Negro spiritual, "We shall overcome," I was bonded to him.
Yeah.
And it was not just a warning to LBJ's white colleagues, but it was a signal to all of the African Americans working for civil rights that he heard them, he was listening to them, and he was with them.
Mm-hmm.
To a much less morally significant sense, it is important to note that Biden name-checking at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, both Dark Brandon and New York Times PitchBot.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, this is not a moral equivalent. It is simply a signal to the netroots. I hear you. I am listening to you, and I am a part of this. I get you. And Biden's done a couple things that I don't like. I know he's done a couple things environmentally that people don't like.
Yeah.
We're going to have to elect House members to the left of Biden.
Yeah.
Who and this is something that I learned from Junior Dude this week. I was helping him out with a presentation he had to do on marijuana legalization, which is one of his obsessive interests. He knows every state in the union and when they legalized pot. Every single one. And whether it's medicinal is legal, whether it's just been decriminalized, whether it's fully legal, etc. He knows all of them.
You say obsessive interest. I say area of policy expertise.
It's an area of policy expertise for Junior Dude.
He really is.
But one of the things that happened, one of the things he's learning in his public policy class that he's taking, where he's getting an A and just forget about it, because this is just his total. He bathes in this, right? But one of the things that he is being taught is how incremental everything is in the Congress, that they just do things in little advances. I know. And it's so frustrating. But one of the things that the Congress did sort of under the radar of a lot of people was put in some legislation regarding the appropriations to the Department of Justice. And the appropriations to the Department of Justice are now designed in such a way that the Department of Justice and the FBI and the federal law enforcement agencies are not allowed to interfere with state law regarding the legalization of pot. So FBI isn't allowed to run in and start arresting people for using pot in Illinois. Because there's no money to do it. It doesn't have to do with standing up and declaring, okay, pot's legal in Illinois, so we love pot. They're not saying that. They're just simply not giving any money. And it's an appropriation. Who's paying attention to that?
Wait a minute. Are you telling
Junior Dude is.
Are you telling me that Joseph Robinette Biden is defunding the police, BlueGal?
Defunding the pot police in states where pot is legal.
Yep.
And so this is kind of the point, is we need to elect Congress people. And fortunately, Democrats are pretty good once they're able to elect Congress people, of electing competent Congress people with competent staffs who know about appropriations, who know how to finagle these things, to say, oh, Joe Biden made this environmental thing that we don't like. Well, we're just going to take the money away from that.
Yep.
So that we can't do the drilling where they want to do it. We're not going to provide any subsidies if you drill in this place. Well, there goes the profit margin, right?
Yep.
And if that's hidden in the appropriations, I mean, Joe Biden will know what's in the appropriations, but he's not going to veto a budget that comes from a Democrat that's been passed by Hakeem Jeffries. But I wanted the drilling.
Yeah. Sorry. Couldn't get it this time. Maybe
we've got to elect more Democrats to the left of Biden on certain issues.
Who understand how things work and are willing to learn how things work. And who have competent staffs
to put these things in and make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's when we win. Because I guarantee you, Marjorie Taylor Greene does not have a staff that knows squat about how to put an appropriations in to make something happen.
No, she doesn't have a staff.
She's too busy fundraising for herself.
Her staff doesn't know that you can't yell liar. And you're
and what the rules are about that.
Yeah. No, and other people did, and that's why she had to shut her hole for the entire rest of the hearing.
For the entire session, exactly.
Would you like to do a news roundup?
Let's do a news roundup.
Me first?
Elon Musk, the current owner of Twitter.
Yeah. Who knows what tomorrow will bring.
Has threatened to reassign NPR's Twitter account at NPR to someone else if they don't start tweeting again.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a wiener.
Just what an asshole. It's just
On an unprompted Tuesday email, he wrote, so is NPR going to start posting on Twitter again, or should we reassign at NPR to another company?
Yeah. Great.
How about we assign at GFY to Elon Musk?
Yeah. Twitter's, man, I don't even, I'm not taking any bets as to whether it'll survive another 6 months, really.
Yeah.
The state of Florida passes HB 1521. It bans trans people from bathrooms and forces them to leave if cis people point them out. If you're on a connecting flight to Florida, a convention, are you on vacation, are you visiting family, trans people can be placed under arrest for using the bathroom. This bill now goes to Ron DeSantis, who I'm sure is going to sign it into law.
So is there any law that says cis people can't peek under the stall?
I think pretty much anything goes when it comes to Florida.
Terrorizing difference. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Trump will not call any witnesses to rebut E. Jean Carroll's account of him raping and then defaming her. Attorney Joseph Tacopina said Trump would not testify because you begged him not to.
Please.
Tacopina said, yeah, you want to go to jail? Testify. In the civil case because he was in Scotland to break ground on a new golf course. And the one expert witness he planned to call is unable to testify due to a health issue. The jury instead saw a videotape of Trump's deposition, which included footage from the Access Hollywood tape in which Trump brags about groping and kissing women without their consent.
Yeah.
Apparently, he's now been prompted to leave Ireland early and come back and appear at a New York trial. His lawyers should physically block him from entering any courtroom.
Lay down in front of his little golf cart and don't let him leave the house.
Yeah.
House Democrats took a procedural step to bypass Kevin McCarthy and Republican leaders to raise the debt ceiling and avert financial or federal default, and I might say financial disaster. Democrats would need at least 5 Republicans to support a so-called discharge petition, which allows a majority of House lawmakers to bring a bill directly to the floor without the cooperation of leadership. Rather than trying to discharge the bill itself, Democrats instead would add the petition addressing the debt ceiling to an amendment to a placeholder bill from Democratic Representative Mark DeSaulnier, which was filed in January. A possible default is now projected as soon as June 1st. Quote, House Democrats are working to make sure we have all options at our disposal to avoid a default, Hakeem Jeffries wrote in a letter to colleagues.
Again, the grown-ups in the House of Representatives. We need more of those. We need a majority. We need Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, and then we need to simply hand things to Joe Biden to sign.
This week I heard on some broadcast or podcast, they all run together in my mind, but it was a fairly popular one, how Democrats have failed to educate the American people about the difference between the deficit and the debt and default and budgeting and so forth. And you know what? I'm getting fucking sick and tired of American people can't be expected to know how their government works. American people are too busy driving their kids to soccer practice to understand that this is a fascist regime trying to take over their country. How are they supposed to know this stuff? I don't know. Pay some minimal attention to your government, how things work. Secondly,
you expect Congress to behave as though they want the American and world economy to continue.
Well,
I think self-interest would matter to them.
Even if that is true, and it doesn't, but even if that were true, I have heard Democrats explaining how the budget works and how the shit's going to blow up more times than I care to count on the places where Democrats are allowed to show up and talk. Mm-hmm. I don't know what magical forum this person or these people think exists that get to ordinary Americans who are busy watching Survivor or busy watching Cake Battle or busy watching reruns of Mission Impossible, and that's me. And then reach through the television screen and educate these people about things that have been going on in their government and fights we've been having for 30 years. But it's always the Democrats' job to educate the public on shit they don't want to learn and don't want to know. And then when people act stupidly, it's because Democrats did not do a good enough job of blah, 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 blah. That really got under my skin.
Yeah. In what legal experts say could be the most brazen and egregious campaign finance violation in memory and possible wire fraud, Herschel Walker solicited and received $535,200 from a donor, and the donation went to his private company.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, in the same state, Marjorie Taylor Greene's spending campaign money on SUVs and fences for her house.
Yeah.
And receiving no blowback at all from party leadership, from Fox News, from anyone. So it is so easy to just spend this money on yourself anyway.
Yeah.
The idea that Herschel Walker blatantly just had it deposited into a private company instead of into his super PAC where he could spend it any way he wanted to and no one would say squat. He's a special kind of stupid.
Yeah. We missed the opportunity to see him in the Senate, but you know what? Just looking at this one scandal, he would have fit right in. A McDonald's franchisee in Kentucky employed 2 10-year-old children in violation of federal labor laws, the Department of Labor said Tuesday. Bauer Food, LLC, limited liability, my ass, a Louisville-based operation of 10 McDonald's franchise locations across 2 states, employed the children, the Department of Labor said in a news release. Officials said the children were not paid, yet sometimes worked as late as 2 a.m., and they, quote, prepared and distributed food orders, cleaned the store, worked at the drive-through window, and operated a register. Investigators learned that, quote, one of the 2 children was allowed to operate a deep fryer, a prohibited task for workers under 16 years old.
I wonder if this isn't an employee's kids who can't afford daycare.
I think it probably is. I'm almost certain that would explain it. I can't imagine them actually dragging in. But isn't that a problem?
Yeah, it is. It's a real problem.
That you're paid so little you can't afford daycare, so you bring your kids to work, and you know what? I'll have to put them to work.
Put them to work at the fryer. Yeah.
There's so much wrong here, and it's so fixable, and there's so few people that want to fix it. So,
a Texas bill that would abolish the elections administrator only in the Democratic Harris County is moving closer to final passage after a Monday vote moved the legislation out of the Texas House Elections Committee. The Houston Chronicle writes, quote, the measures call for the, quote, abolition, unquote, of election administrators in counties with populations larger than 1 million, a metric that only applies to Harris County, which Republican state lawmakers have taken a keen interest in the aftermath of the 2022 midterms.
Yeah. The original draft, it was any county that rhymes with Ferris or Maris. But that was deemed too obvious and blatant.
Was too obvious? Yeah.
And in local news, we just want to thank everyone for their concern about our health and welfare. There was a massive dust storm along the I-55 corridor. That's the highway. That's the main drag between Chicago and downstate. Comes right through Springfield.
It's the main drag between Springfield and St. Louis. We were on that road last Saturday.
Yes, we were. And there are lots of farm fields in Illinois, as you probably guess. They run right up to the edge of the highway. And this is plowing season. And a lot of those fields have been plowed, and the dirt was just on the surface. And along comes these 50-mile-an-hour winds or higher straight line winds, and there's nothing blocking them. There's no wind
trees.
Breaks, no trees, no mountains, nothing. And it just blows straight across, and it reduced visibility to 0 very fast. And there was a massive pileup. Several fatalities, I think 7 fatalities.
Six or seven people were killed. Yeah.
And they said, don't use the highway. The next day, the same conditions occurred. They closed the highway early enough, but the next day, the same thing happened. I-55 was closed due to massive dust storms caused by plowed dirt being thrown up into the air and reducing visibility to 0. So
and there really isn't an alternate route. I mean, that's the drag to St. Louis. That's it. It was terrible.
You can get up and down to the north part of Illinois on I-57. There's other routes, but down to St. Louis, that's pretty much the only one.
It was by Divernon, which is these accidents. They were about 13 or 14 miles from our home.
Yep. And we have been. I mean, you and I came home during Winter Storm Bruce. Remember that?
Winter Storm Bruce. Oh, my God.
We had dropped Junior Dude off at Augustana. It was horizontal snow, visibility 0, snow thunder, which I had never heard before. I don't think I'd ever heard before. We crept along at 5 miles an hour from Augustana back down to Springfield. Once we hit Peoria, it was clear. But it's 0 visibility with high winds is absolutely no joke. And there were cars literally being blown off the road. There were emergency vehicles being spinning out. So you know what the trick is? Pull off to the side and wait. Don't try to fight the weather, especially in the Midwest, especially during high winds. So we're safe. We're fine. We're very lucky and feel terrible about what happened to those nice people on the roads.
Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. And by the way, we need more Internet Kitties. Please send some. This week's Internet Kitty is Wally. Wally is an all-black kitty who in this picture is sitting next to a moose cookie jar because reasons that are none of your business. A moose cookie jar. And of course, Wally eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store dreck, your cats will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh my Lord, it's freshly poured. And you can visit Wally at our Facebook page or website, and you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, or any other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, Postal Unions! Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. We love coffee. And this is not charity. This is our full-time job. See our website, proleftpod.com, for details on the various ways you can support the show. If you were waiting for your tax refund to arrive in order to send us a donation, we are now waiting for your donation.
Yes. Oh, and if you want to buy our house and let us live here rent-free, that's fine too.
Oh, sure. We'll sell you our house.
Sure.
And you can put a fence up and we'll live here rent-free until we die. That's fine with us. Mm-hmm. Now, and also a reminder, May, the month of May, is a light month for listener input. That's been true since 2004, really. Everyone's out in their garden. Everyone's planning for Mother's Day and graduation and everything else. So it's just a light month for listener input. So it's a great time to get our attention. Our PayPal, Patreon, and postal address information is all at proleftpod.com. Please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. And thank you for doing that. Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, BlueGal, the Internet Kitties want everyone to know that until the writer's strike is over, they'll be joining me watching reruns of Mission Impossible on Pluto TV. Go, Writers Unions!
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
A Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2023 DGBG Productions.